Hello, Hopkinton, and welcome to another episode of Hopkinton Weekly, live from HCAM's Studio A. This is actually our final episode of 2022, and I hope that you have enjoyed the series so far. We are working behind the scenes to improve the show and add more elements, so I really invite you back in 2023 to see what we have come up with. This show is designed to connect us and inform us of all the interesting things and all the people that make Hopkinton a great place to live. And spoiler alert, that's all of us. So tonight, I am very pleased to welcome Ann Mattina into our studios from the Historical Society. We'll be having a chat about what's been happening there. Also, I just want to point out that you may have seen a lot of new programming lately. This is pretty exciting. Yesterday, we had 5 live streams of events in Hopkinton. And tonight, Wednesday here, we have 5 live streams of things that are going on in Hopkinton that we're working to bring to our community. So I hope that you enjoy that. You may be able to see Mike and Matt in the control room who are making all the magic happen. And we will invite you to stay tuned for future episodes and to keep in touch with us as we go through it. But right now, I'm going to be heading over to the other portion of our studio set where I can welcome who is the current Vice President of the Hopkinton Historical Society, Ann Mattina. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. You know, I get a lot of interesting things that I find when I go to the Historical Society,
Yes.
and we've been doing some programming. It's all been great. Before we get to all of that, I'm interested, Ann. You're the current Vice President. You are a past president.
Yes.
Okay? So tell me about how you discovered the Historical Society.
Well, I think the very first time I discovered the building itself was at one point they were collecting goods for their annual yard sale. And I went in and I thought, this place is fantastic. But I didn't have an opportunity to join at that point, and it wasn't until 2015 I had chaired the town's 300th anniversary committee, planning committee for the 300th anniversary for a few years. And as part of that, one of our big events during that year was a house and garden tour. And it was coordinated between the committee, the Historical Society, the Garden Club, and the Women's Club. And it was fantastic. We had 6 houses and 6 gardens that people could tour, and I just thought it was so much fun. And we had our after party there just to thank all the volunteers and the homeowners and the gardeners who had welcomed us. And I immediately got involved. And at that point, and I was asked to be on the board, and very soon after, Bill Shaw, who had been president for 10 years, he had taken a new job at the University of Connecticut and was looking for a replacement. So I took over from Bill and did it for 3 years, and then we were so lucky to have Claire Wright for a couple of years. Poor Claire, she got stuck with the, during COVID with the lockdown, and all of our plans were kind of thrown out the window at that point.
Yeah.
And our current president, John Palmer, came on board last year as the president, and we are so lucky to have him as well. He's a really great asset to the organization and to the community as a whole.
Yes. And yeah, just, all the people that I've met there, what is so, I don't know how, I want to just say it's like cute. It's so adorable. Like your passion for the history of our community, which, you know what, objectively is fascinating.
Yeah.
The stories that come out of here are fascinating. Miss Duffy?
Miss Duffy, yes.
When I was reading it, I was thinking, that could be a screenplay. Somebody would write that.
Absolutely. And John has written a book on Miss Duffy and all of her travails and how the town came to, almost came to a civil war over the actions involved Just very briefly, Miss Duffy was a brand new teacher in the high school. She was very young, and from all accounts, from her pictures that we've seen in newspapers, she was very attractive. And one day, we're not quite sure if he was her actual beau or not, but a man went by on a trolley car, and she waved to him out of the window of her classroom.
Yeah.
And she was fired for that.
Actually, what my understanding was she waved behind her back.
Oh, okay.
Out the window.
Out the window. And it ended up that the students went on strike to protest her firing. The school committee and the select board fought. They had to call in the state marshals to calm the town down. It went to ended up in court.
In Framingham.
In Framingham. It was a very very well covered trial. In the end, Miss Duffy prevailed, and I think she retired in the late 50s or early 60s. So she had over a 50-year career as a teacher here in Hopkinton. And she was very active in a lot of other things. She was one of the founders of the Women's Club, and she was involved in a lot. So John Palmer has put together a booklet, a book on this event, and it's fascinating. And it's for sale at the Historical Society.
Right. Now, you know what I find amazing about that? Just that one story. Just think about this. She was one of the founders of the Hopkinton Women's Club, which celebrated 100 years.
Yes.
So it sounds so long ago, but she was alive when I was alive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It really like brings you. I remember once thinking that somebody could have shaken the hand of Abraham Lincoln, and then that person could have shaken my hand.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like it seems so long ago, but yet it's not.
Yes.
And I think it's important to try to keep perspective on that, so that, as they say, if you don't learn history, it repeats itself. And you know, there's a lot of knowledge in all the actions that have gone on.
Absolutely.
So when you go into the Historical Society, what do you do as the vice president?
Well, actually, I just help John out wherever he needs it in terms of, helping to organize programs and work with the volunteers. We have a great core of volunteers who are there every Monday afternoon when the building's open from 2 to 5. And they do a lot of work in addition to those hours on Monday. What I try to do is to try to communicate what is going on in the Historical Society by making connections such as this. We have recently connected with the new editor of Hop News, and I know HCAM has as well.
Yeah.
And we're going to be doing twice monthly articles for Hop News as well. So it's all about getting people to know what's actually there and how it belongs to everyone in the community. And we encourage people to participate. I think every program we've ever had has been free and open to the public. So, it's a great way to learn about the background of the town itself.
Right, which is so cool. I mean, trains used to come through town. They had a trolley through the center of town. Of course, the shoe industry in town. It was amazing. Now, when you are at the Historical Society and you're doing your work, or you're looking around, what types of things do you find personally interesting that captivates your attention?
Well, I have a soft spot in my heart for two different things. One is the working people of Hopkinton. I'm very interested in the Irish immigrants who were the workers in the factories, in all those shoe and boot manufacturers here in town. One of the other things that kind of tipped me towards the Historical Society as well as the library was the very first time I ever saw the Wilson Street Cemetery, which some people know about. Most people are not too familiar with it. It's the original Catholic cemetery in town. It's owned by St. John's Church, and there are literally dozens and dozens of Irish immigrants buried in there. from that were residents of both Hopkinton and Southborough. And, you know, there's Civil War soldiers buried in there, including one, Thomas Featherstone, who was killed at Gettysburg.
Wow.
And over the years, you know, I've done some research on that because I'm very interested in who the original immigrants were to the town, because they turned this Puritan Yankee community on its head, I think, in terms of, in a lot of different ways.
Yes.
But in addition, you know, with the Wilson Street Cemetery, I've done some work on that. I've done some work on the people working in the factories. And I'm also very interested in women's history. And a project that I've been working on for the last few years, and I've done some presentations on it and hope to do something similar with HCAM in the future, is on a woman named Eliza Wadsworth McMecken Bridges, which is quite a handle.
Yeah.
Eliza was born in 1870 in Mississippi, and you're probably wondering, well, and she's a Hopkinton person? Her mother was Eliza Wadsworth. Her father was John McMecken. Eliza Wadsworth, from Main Street, East Main Street now, the Stone House, not the pub, not the inn, but the big stone house with the red barn, was where the Wadsworths lived. Her mother went to Mississippi after the Civil War to teach. I have yet to find records if she, as many women from New England did, single women from New England, actually went to the South to teach newly freed enslaved people.
Okay.
And I think that's why she was there, but I haven't found that record yet. She was a teacher in town before she went. She married the school superintendent, John McMecken, who happened to be a former slaveholder, which I find very fascinating. They actually got married here in Hopkinton, and then they went back to Mississippi. They had Eliza Wadsworth McMecken, and both died within her first year of life. Both of her parents died. And her maternal aunts, including Frances Wadsworth Bridges, of the Bridges Shoe Factory, her two maternal aunts went down and got her from relatives that were in, McMecken relatives that were in Alabama, brought her back home to Hopkinton and raised her here.
Wow.
And she is one of the first women to have graduated from Boston University Law School, one of the first women admitted to the bar in the state of Massachusetts. She was also the town council. And for years, she was the town council, so Hopkinton, you know, had a female town council at a time when there were hardly any women practicing law at all. This was in the like 19 teens to late 30s. She died in the early 40s, and she just has one of the most fascinating lives ever. So we have a lot of Bridges material. I've gone through a lot of that, and there's a lot of material also at the public library on the Bridges family, particularly photos and letters from Eliza Wadsworth, and which is just a treasure trove. And she, and also the other place, the Bridges Shoe Factory actually moved out of town in the 1890s after the second big fire, and opened in Framingham, and the family moved to Framingham, although Eliza lived on East Main Street.
Okay.
And not in the stone house, in the White House next to it.
Okay.
And she practiced law and here in town, and she was one of the founders of the library, one of the original founders of the Hopkinton Public Library, and she just is, to me, is absolutely fascinating. Fascinating person, and I enjoy going through the letters, things like, we have things like invitations to weddings, and you know, people's cards that they used to drop off when they'd go into someone's
calling
house.
Cards?
Calling cards.
Yeah.
We have those. We have, it's amazing what's in that building.
Right. So you said a few things that I think are just very, very cool. And one is that everybody in America knows about Gettysburg
Right.
and knows the battle that happened there. And everybody in Massachusetts knows that there were Massachusetts soldiers who went and fought and died and some came home
Right.
from Gettysburg, right?
Right.
But do you know that one of those people who fought at Gettysburg is buried in our community?
Right.
Like, that brings the focus so close to home
Right.
that it's kind of like touching history by knowing that. And the other thing that I really love, when you described it as a treasure trove of all
Right.
this stuff,
Yes.
when we think about what that was like, we look back, and you said it yourself, oh, founding of this and the first of that, and like all these things were going on. If we went back in time and saw that, it would be like today. People would be like, yeah, she's our town council, so what?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no, it's actually very cool. And distance
Yes.
through time can really put a focus and an emphasis on that. And I like knowing that the treasures of tomorrow are here today.
Right.
And what does that look like? We know what that looks like because we have the treasures of yesterday.
Right.
You know, and the style of living changes, and the snapshot. I've seen diaries in there
Yes.
and newspaper accounts, and
Yes.
some of the newspaper stories are really funny.
They are.
It's like somebody's writing a comic book. And
Right.
They're just not foolish, but just like very colorful and
Right.
like very dramatic. So it's just so interesting.
It is.
Not only is it so interesting, and it's, as you know, it's so important for us to keep perspective
Absolutely.
on the world.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things that we're looking forward to, you said about, looking at today for tomorrow, Hopkinton certainly has changed significantly in the 70 so years since the Historical Society was founded. And one of the things that I think looking forward is towards the future is that we need to be collecting now for that time period, where in 50 years people are going to say, there was a pandemic, people
Yes.
stayed in their houses for months on end.
Yes.
You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I know that they've done some work on this at the library, and we'd like to, continue that as well, and getting people's stories.
Yes.
And the other thing we're very interested in is the story of immigrants to the town, because it changes the town, and all in really positive ways. And I think that's something that we, want to
Yeah.
pursue.
Yeah. I just, in this like fact, you know what? I don't even know. You guys have a depth of knowledge. Is there any content concerning the pandemic from 100 years ago?
Well, Linda Connolly, who has worked as our archivist and is also works at the library, she's our bridge between those two great spaces. Linda actually wrote an article, I think it was in the Independent, about 1918, and fascinating story about a family from town, the Sullivans, including, I think they had 4 or 5 daughters, and if I'm not recalling this correctly, I apologize, but 2 of them were nurses, and I believe that they were at Fort Devens. Fort Devens was, one of the ground zeros for the flu of 1918, because it was all the soldiers returning from Europe. And so there was a terrible outbreak. And I believe one of the Sullivan sisters also, there was a massive outdoor hospital that was built on the grounds of the Armory in Springfield. And I believe one of the Sullivan sisters also was out there. And Linda wrote about that family. And they're all buried here in St. John's Cemetery.
Yeah.
And it's, again, just a real strong connection from the past to the present.
Right. And that is the first and only time that I ever knowingly was in something that I knew was going to be in the history books, as
Right.
they say. I mean, I remember where I was when 9/11 happened, and I heard about it. I remember where I was when Princess Diana
Yes.
was killed, but
Yes.
I wasn't part of it. I wasn't
Right.
there. The
Right.
pandemic, everybody it touched the entire globe.
Right.
It's so huge, and yet we were part of it.
Right,
So,
right.
and some of the stories, I mean, the people. How
know.
about that story?
I
You
know.
know, like they're teaching themselves how to sew just so they can make masks. And
Right.
so much richness there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, so I hope that this has been a great promotion for everything that the Historical Society and the Center holds, because
Right.
it is fascinating.
Good.
Let's talk a little bit about some current things that are going on there.
Okay. Well, one of the things we're very excited about is before the pandemic even occurred, we were able to get a grant from Community Preservation to digitize a group of photographs that we have. And Linda Connolly and others worked on that, but primarily Linda, of getting the photographs, and she had actually done something very similar for the library with their photographs, because they also have a really nice collection of historical photographs. And putting them in the format that they needed to be in, and we submitted them to the Digital Commonwealth. Digital Commonwealth is a site, if people are interested in Massachusetts history at all, this is the place to go, because it is all 351 communities across the state have contributed something to this site. And you can go on there and you can just put in Hopkinton and you can find hundreds of photographs, including the most recent set that we donated, 130 photographs. As I said, the project started prior to COVID, and it took us until last spring to finally get them to come and get the photographs from us. The Boston Public Library hosts this Digital Commonwealth. But they took them and then they put them all online early fall.
Okay.
So we really want people to go and check those out, because in addition to those things, there are letters and pamphlets. They're not all from us. They're from a variety of sources that are in good digital condition, and people can use them for a lot of different reasons.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
And is that project, is your collaboration with that project finished, or will there be more content?
Well, I think that we would like to get more content on there, because we have more content. We have this enormous collection, the Fitch family collection, which some people are familiar with. The Fitches, I think he was the second minister of town, Nathaniel Fitch. I'm probably getting his first name wrong.
I don't think you are. I think that's right.
But they also had the Fitch family farm on Ash Street. There were various houses that the family lived on Ash Street, and they were very prominent in town for generations. One of them, for example, one of the Fitches was one of the original people from Massachusetts who went out to Kansas prior to the Civil War with John Brown to make it so that Kansas was coming into the Union.
Yep.
And there was a fight over whether it was going to come in as a free state or slave state.
Yep.
And hundreds of abolitionists from Massachusetts went out there to settle to make sure it came in as a free state.
Right.
And one of them was one of the Fitches, and he was actually killed in a raid, Quantrill's raid, which I know our colleague Eric has talked about here.
That's a great show. Yes.
Yeah, if
and
you haven't
you
seen
should
it.
find that.
You should
so
find
our
it.
time is really
Okay,
short now.
okay, good.
So
Sorry.
no, please
Obviously,
don't.
I can talk about this for a while.
Of course. Now, is something happening Monday?
Yes.
Something you want to share?
Well, I do want to let people know that we are open from 2 to 5 every Monday afternoon, and we have some great things in there that if you are interested in Hopkinton history, some great objects that you might want to pick up for as Christmas presents.
Okay.
Without a huge investment. We have John's book on Miss Duffy.
Yeah.
We also have, John also did a collaboration on a book on all the different monuments and memorials that are on the Common. So that's another book, and we have some games left over. Some people have seen these. It was Hopkinton as Monopoly that was put out in the 70s, and so those are all available. We have some other items that people might want to pick up as last-minute Christmas gifts.
Wonderful. I hope that people will take advantage of that and stop by. Ann, thank you so much for spending the time here with us.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you so much for watching this episode, and we look forward to seeing you in the next year. We're going to go out with a little bit of footage from this year's Troublemakers. It will be their version of The Little Drummer Boy, and our HCAM volunteer, Gene Kaminsky, was there and recorded it for us. And after that, the debut slot, Matt, debut slot is? The first episode of the K9 Connection that we're producing with with Bay Path here in town. So thank you all so much. Please take care of yourself over this season, and we look forward to seeing you in 2023. Bye-bye.